All right. Yeah. So this kind of just a continuation of that earlier attempt in the morning of how is it just to kind of live stream around like a 9 to 5 where making it Gen Z after hours or just like Dear Gen Z after hours, I think makes sense for the most part. And yes, again, this is also for the viewers from earlier. As I am driving, no, I'm not necessarily going to be checking chat or anything like that because it's a bad idea. Was this idea of like, how do you like do things outside of work? How do you continue to manage, say, like a social life? How do you continue to manage your hobbies, your health, your physical activity outside of your 9 to 5 job? And it's definitely not a easy feat. So I remember back in university, this also was something that occurred where there was that kind of it was like this trifecta. If you could effectively manage your studies, your social life, and your health, you were doing better than like a good 70 to 80% of your peers and the other students. And I think the same can be said to a degree for those of us, actively working, actively that have just these 9 to 5 day jobs or just, any job in general that you're not super, super stoked about. Um, that if you're able to balance those things out, so again, that emphasis on social life, emphasis on your physical health, emphasis on the actual work itself, if you find that balance, then that in itself, I think, is key, especially in, again, after hours, where in your off, you will no longer have to think about work for the day. Now, there is something that I think does need to be touched on and does require kind of a bit more nuance, and that's the idea of like remote work. Like, I'm personally all for the idea of remote work and not having to be tied down to like one location specifically. However, I definitely understand and do like the benefits of having a physical office to go into. Like, that in itself, I think, is super helpful, and it makes things a lot easier if, like, especially those of us coming out of like the pandemic, being able to like find coworkers and connect with people and actually plug in to a team. It is a lot easier in person. Like, there's no denying that. But also the flexibility to maintain your life outside of work and to maintain a good, again, health and social life, that's where remote work is phenomenal for. So when after hours comes in, so when you're off the clock, then it's really up to you to figure out, okay, how am I going to best spend my time making the most of it? Because the original like idea, like the 8 hour workday, was all about kind of not burning your employees to a crisp, because that was during like the Industrial Revolution. And I don't remember the full timeline for that, and I'm not going to dive into that because obviously I'm driving. But it was important because we had this 24 hours in a day, and no, not all 24 hours are built equal. I hate anyone that says that, because distinctly, if you have someone that has like a private chef and can do your laundry for you, prep all your meals for you, then they have a very different 24 hours than someone that is running around with 3 kids and is having to prep all their meals and having to cook everything, do the laundry, and stay on top of all the household chores. So not all 24 hours are built equal, but having that extra emphasis on making the most of the time you're not on the clock, I think, is super important. Because one of the things that, like, even tonight, I'm going out to dinner with my wife and 2 friends because, hey, I just got off work. It's going to be fantastic to actually catch up with people and socialize. And that's something that not everyone gets to do, because not everyone, I think, makes it that priority. And so if you're able to work it in there, I, one, highly encourage it, but then two, I think that's going to be what contributes to you not burning out in your job. That's going to contribute to you not, absolutely loathing getting up every day. Because been there, done that. Don't recommend it, but it's something that I think at some point we all at least share a similar experience around. That there is so many things that we want to do, that we would prefer to spend our time doing, rather than clocking in and working to earn our paychecks. However, money makes the world go round, and we can't really avoid that. And so we should emphasize the time that we do get and make the most of it. And that's where like we get all these like kind of extra weird, I would say, subcultures and subgroups out of it. Like for myself, for the past almost, I think I'm going like 6 years now, that I've woken up at 5 a.m. because that's the best time for me to get into the gym, to get my health in order, and to stay in shape, knowing full well that my job is more of a stationary office job. And that's just a trade-off I've decided to make. But that means I can't be too rigid about it in trying to wake up at 5 a.m. every day and still clock in on time and get to work, and then still have enough energy and mental, wherewithal to have a social life after work. And on top of that, being married, and still newly married for the most part, that in of itself plays yet another factor in it. And I think those of us who are trying to strike that balance, we're going to get it wrong. But if we're constantly striving to balance out the things that are important to us, then that in of itself, I think, is the real goal and kind of like the real kicker. Because for myself, I said it earlier on this morning's live stream, was that we don't work to live. Oh no, I take that back. We don't live to work, we work to live. Our jobs are meant to supply us with the ability to lead the lives that we want to live. And again, you have the unicorn out there, the people that are able to know what they want to do from the young age of like 6 or 10 or whatever it is, and they kind of full send into it, and more power to them. But for the rest of us who follow along the more average path, then yeah, we're going to end up in jobs that we may not actually necessarily love. We may enjoy our team, we may have a manager that actually is pretty cool, but for the most part, we want our job to just be able to support our life. We want our job to be able to provide us the opportunity to buy a sweet treat here or there. We want to be able to treat ourselves out. We want to be able to afford rent without having to worry about X, Y, Z. And we want to be able to afford the means to maintain, again, that balance and that kind of pyramid effect of your work, your relationships, and your health. So that's just kind of like, that's been like the thought of the day, distinctly because as I approach that 2-year mark with my current company, I very much so still have that desire to be my own boss. I very much so still have that desire to have more control over my time, because there's a couple ideas and variations to like what freedom is. Like I've known I talked about this on this channel in the past, the idea of like financial freedom. And with that, financial freedom in itself is fantastic because you have the chance to buy back time, where I will put it this way: a second of time spent on one thing is a second that you can never actually buy back, but you can technically buy the next one, which sounds a little weird, a little bit convoluted, but it makes sense in terms of, or you guys let me know if it makes sense, but I think it makes sense in terms of, hey, if I have the ability to support myself, my family, and provide, all the resources, all the opportunities, and I don't have to do it while being beholden to a time clock, then that in itself, I think, is true financial freedom, because you also get time freedom and location freedom, because the power's in your hand to decide that. And it's not easy, I don't believe anyways, to kind of switch that mindset and understand where that shift would occur, where that shift could occur. Because for the most part, as you are trying to make, again, the most of the amount of time that you have in any given everything. And I think that's something that if we remember that anything is possible, but not everything is possible, that kind of gives us, I think, almost permission to say, oh, cool. That means with the limited amount of time that I do have, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of, if you're in a relationship, if you're married or whatnot, I'm taking care of my spouse. I'm taking care of my partner. If you are an avid, say, like gym goer, then it's like, I want to make sure I take care of my health. I want to make sure that I'm actively prioritizing going to the gym. If you're really into cooking on that version, it's like, oh, I want to make sure that I get home in time to cook a meal. But at the end of the day, after you are off the clock after you are done doing whatever, earns you your living, it's kind of like, I won't say the world's your oyster, which is a very old saying. I don't know if it's an old saying necessarily. Someone let me know if that's considered an old saying. But after you no longer have to be on the clock, then you have all the chances and all the opportunities to instead focus on the things that are meaningful to you. And that's something that I encourage you guys to do every single day, every single chance that you get. Because, once again, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. There's just not enough time in the day. There's just not enough resources. But we all have, I think, that option to choose what takes priority at any given moment. And that, of course, extends to work, but I think it is especially important after work and after, you're outside of your job. Because then I can choose to say, all right, I'm going to either spend time with my wife, I'm either going to go play some video games, I'm going to go to the gym, I might go for a run, maybe I'll spend time curled up with a good book, maybe I will cook dinner because I want a nice way to decompress and have a good meal. There's so many things that we can do that if you're able to recognize that and not fall into kind of that a negative spiral, I think that's going to make, after hours for you that much more, I think, healthy and fulfilling, and frankly, it's just a lot more fun. So yeah, that's kind of just like the thought of the day. And let me know if you guys have any like opinions on that, because for me it makes sense. But again, that's just because I have a normal 9-to-5 job. Maybe you have a job, and I say 9-to-5, I work 10-hour shifts. And maybe you have a job that has you working 12, been there, done that. But it's all about just how we choose to manage our time and what we ultimately want to do with it. But with that, keep it very simple. I'll see you all next time, and we'll see what topic I come up with then. But go out there, do great things.